Jeremiah 50:40 says, "As God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein."
What the prophet is saying is that no common man shall abide there, in this case Babylon, neither shall any son of Adam dwell therein.
This is Daniel 7:13. "I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven."
Enosh in Aramaic means the same as Ish does in Hebrew, that is, mankind. In this verse, Daniel is pointing to the coming Christ. He is the Son of Man, as he often referred to himself. Matthew 8:20 is one example.
Later in Daniel he says, "So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O Son of Man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision."
Now, Daniel refers to himself. He is a son of Adam, in the lineal descent of the Semites, not simply in the chain of generic mankind.
Psalm 8 is a psalm of David, who says in verse 4, "What is man that thou art mindful of him, and the Son of Man that thou visitest him?"
Here, David is drawing a clear distinction. What is common man that thou art mindful of him, and the sons of Adam that thou visitest them? Even though God is mindful of all mankind, it is the sons of Adam whom he visits or cares for in a special way. Remember, this is Old Testament, and this is Israel, the sons of Adam.
In the King James Version, Psalm 49:1 and 2 says, "Hear this, all ye people, give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together." And the NIV says virtually the same thing. "Hear this, all you peoples, listen, all who live in the world, both low and high, rich and poor alike."
Essentially, the NIV translators, with no better ideas, borrowed from the 1611 translation and let Adam be low people, while Ish are high people. But we know better. The message is for all the inhabitants of the world, which includes both Adamites and non-Adamites, or more specifically, Israelites and Gentiles.
Psalm 80:17 in the King James Version reads, "Let thy hand be upon the man of thy right hand, upon the Son of Man whom thou madest strong for thyself." The American Standard Version reads, "Let thy hand be upon the man of thy right hand, upon the Son of Man whom thou madest strong for thyself."
Let your hand be upon the common man, generic mankind, Gentiles. But it is the nation of Israel, the sons of Adam, whom thou hast made strong for yourself, according to the psalmist.
Isaiah 2:9 reads, "And the mean man, Adam, boweth down, and the great man, Ish, humbles himself," in the King James and a little changed in the American Standard Version.
Note that Adam in Psalms is a low man who becomes a mean man in Isaiah in the King James Version, while modern versions simply follow suit. What Isaiah intended to say was that those from Adam, the Israelites, bow down to God, worship God, whereas Gentiles are humbled by God, a difference in attitude.
Isaiah 2:11 in the King James Version begins, "The lofty looks of man, Ish, shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of men, Adam, shall be bowed down. And the lofty looks of man shall be brought low, and the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down," in the ASV.
There is very little change from version to version, although both sets of translators turn the sentence around, reversing the order a bit. A literal translation from the Hebrew would be, the haughtiness of the eyes of the Adamites, or Israelites, Adam, will be brought low, and the pride of the non-Adamites, or Gentiles, Ish, will be humbled. As it is translated, there is no clear distinction between man and men.
Isaiah 31:8 says, "Then shall the Assyrian fall with the sword, not of a mighty man, Ish, and the sword, not of a mean man, Adam, shall devour him."
This translation misses the meaning completely. It won't be the sword of a Gentile or an Israelite, but the sword of Yahweh that will devour them. In the eyes of the prophet, we are the Adam, the Adamites, the sons of promise. They are the heathen outside the covenant.
Delving somewhat into the New Testament, in 1656, Isaac de la Pereire argued in his book, Men Before Adam, that a literal interpretation of Romans 5:12 through 14 indicated the world was populated before Adam. The key was verse 13. "For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed or charged when there is no law."
Pereire reasoned that the law was given to Adam shortly after his creation, and if there was sin in the world at that time, there must have been people to do it. He wrote, "It must be held that sin was in the world before Adam and until Adam, but that sin was not imputed before Adam. Therefore, other men were to be allowed before Adam who had indeed sinned, but without imputation, because before the law, sins were not imputed or charged."
Although men and sin were in the world before Adam, according to Pereire, the manner of sin was in the form of offenses against nature, violations of natural law, and all died a natural death. It was not until God imposed moral law, with Adam the first to be subject to it, that men were capable of legal sin, trespasses against God's law. Beginning with Adam's fall, human beings died both a natural death and a legal or spiritual death.
10 years before Pereire wrote Men Before Adam, the Westminster Divines penned their confession of faith that we know as the Westminster Confession. They sought to avoid any implications that all of humanity did not commence with Adam by putting the law on Moses. But if Mosaic law and not Adamic law was intended by Romans 5:13, it could mean that sin was not charged before Moses. No, the interpreters were not stepping into that trap. The divines clearly recognized that the moral law, the covenant of works, was given to Adam and said so. The rule of obedience revealed to Adam in the estate of innocence and to all mankind in him was the moral law.
If moral law was given to Adam and already sin was in the world, then wouldn't this involve people?
The Westminster Divines were unwilling to entertain that possibility. They believed that humanity started with Adam and sin was passed to his posterity by natural generation. The harmonizing device employed, although not mentioned specifically in the Westminster Confession, was to maintain that imputation of sin was through the law of Moses, but that it somehow applied retroactively to Adam and his descendants. Well, this made no sense, of course, but they were torn between the illogical and the unthinkable. So, according to the divines, the moral law was not comprehended until the Ten Commandments were delivered by God to Moses.
What did Pereire think of that?
Pereire railed against the position taken by the divines and their insistence that the law was the law of Moses. The interpreters, being between two such inconveniences, were at a stand, nor did they know which way to turn themselves. but because it seemed less prejudicial to affirm that sins were not imputed before Moses and until Moses than to affirm that there were any men before Adam. Therefore, they preferred the first inconvenience before the second. In Perer's mind, since the law transgressed was the law given to Adam of Genesis, the sin was perpetrated by those who coexisted and pre-existed Adam. Sin was not imputed to those forerunners, however, until Adam disobeyed God's law.